Assessment, Joining the Dots, our monthly podcast covering all things assessment. Thanks so much for listening in again. It's great to have you with us. We are GL Assessment, or GL Education, depending on where you are in the world. We're a Renaissance company providing formative standardised assessments in the UK and Ireland, and we work with schools in over 100 countries worldwide. We're really passionate and committed to supporting schools so that you're gaining the best from your assessment data. As we all know, the power of data lies within the what next. What does it mean? What is it actually telling us? And what do we do with it next? And that's what we're here for, to help schools answer those questions. During this episode, we've once again got our reoccurring segments, including our lightbulb moment and our data spotlights. Again, we're hoping that these help support schools in demystifying commonly used terminology within the huge wide world of standardised assessment data. We can always learn more and know more, so whether you're using our assessments or not, you'll hopefully get something from this podcast. I'm Rachel O'Neill, Manager of the Assessment Insights team, who meet with schools to discuss their data. Prior to joining GL, I spent just over 20 years in primary schools as a teacher, middle leader, assistant head and deputy head. I led on assessment for many years and know and understand the power that information can give to teachers when used well to unlock the achievements of pupils we work with so that they can be the best they can be. A real passion of mine is helping to break down the barriers children face so that they can all access learning at their level whilst also striving for more. Having spent all my teaching career within the primary sector, today's episode is something that I'm really keen to speak about. Key Stage 1 SATs. I taught Year 2 and experienced firsthand the pressure these tests put on the children, their families, the teachers and the school to perform and hit targets. Personally, I couldn't have been more thrilled when the announcement came that the government were abolishing them as a statutory requirement. Maybe finally some of our youngest children could concentrate on soaking up new experiences, being creative and demonstrating their learning in different ways. So today I'm talking to Jonathan Bishop, who is the CEO and Executive Head Teacher at Cornerstone Academy Trust, which currently has 4 primary schools within its partnership. He's been working with GL for many years, and one of his schools, Broadclist Community Primary School, has been a GL Centre of Assessment Excellence since 2016. With Jonathan's vast experience and expertise, I'm really excited to be talking to him today about the recent changes to assessment within the primary phase. Hi, Jonathan. It's so great to be speaking to you today, and thank you for giving up some of your very precious time to be here.
Hi, Rachel. Good to be with you.
So this academic year saw the beginning of Key Stage 1 SATs becoming optional rather than statutory. How did you and your staff feel about the announcement when it came?
Well, I think probably like many, a sense of relief. I don't think they are just necessarily ditched without any forethought. We're responsible for an English hub and have worked closely with the Department for Education. And I certainly know with some of the recent Ofsted papers that they've launched, what they're really trying to do is ensure those key basic skills are embedded before trying to get children to jump through hoops to pass tests. So the removal of this high stakes testing point to a better ongoing formative assessment was a big relief to us.
Brilliant. So quite quickly you decided that you wouldn't be taking part in them because obviously they are optional. So some schools will have chosen to carry on with them, but did you and your schools decide not to go forward with them?
Absolutely. We've decided that we wouldn't be doing any of the optional tests. Obviously, in this conversation, we've got something that we believe is more accurate, more diagnostic, more informative to teachers to make those needed judgments to ensure that we can get the best for children, best outcomes for children without needing to sit an exam.
Yeah, so I mean that actually leads into my next question quite nicely. So did you actually feel you needed to make many changes to your assessment cycle as it was?
Not at all. We are continuing with the assessment cycle where we use the full digital solution from GL Assessment with the children each academic year at different points in the year. And so we've kept with that cycle and simply stopped doing the SATs tests at the end of year 2.
Brilliant. So how has the use of GL standardised assessments helped you over the years? Because as you say, you have been using them for many years. And so how do you feel they help you and your teachers across the schools within your trust?
Having the powerful insights that rich data can provide you in the right hands of the right professional is a powerful tool for making early interventions, setting targets that are aspirational but realistic. It means we can meet the needs for every child and adapt the curriculum in a very personalised way because of the richness of that information. So it's more than just checking on progress. It's more than a stick to beat teachers with. We don't want that at all. What we want is to give the teachers the tools to make those informed decisions about what's right for a child. And we think the complete digital solution, if you use every element of it, allows you to get that picture of the whole child that allows the teacher to make those informed decisions.
How have you gone about empowering your teachers to take responsibility for their own classes' data so that it is as meaningful as possible?
Allowing the teachers, first of all, to download the reports that GL assessment produce and having instant access to those reports that would allow them both at individual pupil level but at class level to look at not only the outcomes of those assessments but to look at the recommended approaches that should be taken to support the children. Immediately gives them a diagnostic report that enables them as teachers to take immediate action. But additionally, we're using some of the data analytics that's built into GL, where you can start to combine reports. So a good example would be looking at progress against cognitive ability, and are they making the expected progress against their ability? I think it's also that early screening of children in terms of dyslexia or dyscalculia, so that you're really trying to identify early on the underlying issues that might be a barrier to children's learning. So if they're not making progress, why are they not making good progress? And so having that data brought together where you can look at the cohort or the individual children and begin to combine those assessments. So we're now working on taking that data into a dashboard within Power BI so that teachers can start to filter by trend, by barrier, so that they can group children accordingly based on the richness of that data. And that's those insights. I often take that term and use it with teachers that they might be insightful. It's about making informed decisions based upon good, accurate data.
Brilliant. So we've talked about Key Stage 1 SATs now not being statutory, but of course we do still have Year 6 Key Stage 2 SATs. I'm chair of governors at my local school I've recently been in whilst they were doing those SATs. How do you use GL assessment to help with the process of Key Stage 2 SATs?
So firstly, we would be looking at those indicators that are built into GL assessment. So they've got very helpful, when they take the progress test, indicators of what are they likely to achieve based on their current performance in SATs. Within the cognitive ability test, the CAT tests, then really honing in on those children that need to be pushed further to achieve the very best they can. And sometimes, again, we can be very generic in our analysis. So you look at a 90% combined score, and what we're talking about is getting children sometimes over that 100 mark. They've passed on a scaled score. What we really should be looking is about getting the best for every child. And a SATs test isn't necessarily, in my view, about getting the best out of every child. In order to pass the test, you've got to a degree school them in exam technique. So you are starting to think about the language that is used within a SATs test and the wordiness of how questions are phrased, and helping them tease out of it the key information. I mean, in maths, that's a really good example, isn't it? Often the maths that they're expected to do in terms of number often is relatively straightforward. But that problem solving element that's built in is encapsulated in the wordiness of the question. So you're starting to really train children in that style of question and how to be able to answer it. Now, most people didn't come into teaching to teach children how to pass a test. What we want them to be, of course, is knowledgeable and skillful. And we want that in the breadth and the depth of the curriculum. So we want to take those children that academically, cognitively can be pushed further and deeper. So rather than going for this sort of get them over the pass mark to get as many children over the line as possible, it can really narrow expectations. We all want, don't we, to push children to get the most and the best that they're able to achieve. So we're using the GL assessments to really look at what they have been achieving, what they capably could achieve, and ensuring that every child is pushed to the best. And that way, you will not just be going for a pass mark and training children to pass the test, but you will be using the GL assessments to really personalise the education to the needs of those individual children.
That all just sounds great. So much of that really resonates with me from my previous teaching career, and it just sounds like you're doing some fantastic things with your schools across the trust. And one final little question to finish with: if the government announced the scrapping of Key Stage 2 SATs, would you be just as happy?
Absolutely. I think that accountability is important. And so I think a modern test that is an adaptive test, so that it can really start to, when a child is unable to do the question, adapt the style of questioning to really ascertain and pinpoint the questions that the child is able to do, and when they're finding them too easy, to push them further, and almost having that approached in a digital way, as the complete digital solution enables you to do, can take away some of that stress and anxiety that the formal exams bring, but still provide an exam condition that is testing children's abilities, but in a more targeted, adaptive, supportive way that I think makes them much more accurate. I think with exam testing, there's often a sense of, well, it was good for me, it was good for my father mentality. In the good old days, we had to go through the invigilator pacing up and down the exam hall, and the nerves and the anxiety. Well, if we want to test people under stressful conditions, why do we need to do that when we want to get the best out of them in writing, or the best out of them in reading, or in maths? We could put them in a problem-based situation that demands problem solving under a time limit, and see how people perform in it. So if we could scrap them, I'm not arguing for the scrapping of accountability or the removal of Ofsted. What I'm saying is, if you're going to judge us by something that is more accurate and more diagnostic.
Absolutely. And as you said, something that actually allows an atmosphere for the children to truly show you what they can do which I think as teachers is what we're all there for. So I'm completely with you there, and let's keep fighting, I think, for the hope that perhaps Key Stage 2 SATs might change sometime in the not too distant future.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and looking forward to seeing all the news coming out from your trust as you move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Nice to chat to you today.
We're now going to move on to our Data Spotlight Explainer, designed to demystify data and assessment terminology. For this episode's explainer, I'm going to hand over to my wonderful colleagues Andy and Finn to explain the Progress Test Series, or PT Series for short.
Hello everyone, my name is Finn McClelland and I'm an education advisor at GL, predominantly supporting our independent schools in the UK.
And I'm Andy Small, member of the product marketing team. My remit is to look after our maths and numeracy portfolio.
So Andy, you and I go back quite a long way, as we were in the senior leadership team at the same school before we both moved to work with GL. You were the head of the senior prep and I was head of the junior prep. It was quite a small school, so I recall we did have to wear various hats, with one of yours, Andy, being the assessment hat.
Yep.
And I remember early on in the role, you were tasked with moving the school away from administering their own internal testing towards using tests which would provide a national comparison and perhaps were more reliable than the school's own tests. Is that a fair summary of the task you were given?
Yeah, definitely. Went in there, realised we needed something more robust than what was already in place. People were using their own judgment to evaluate how well students were performing, but it wasn't consistent across subjects. Down to teacher confidence, different approaches, that sort of thing. So the Progress Test Series, or PT Series for short, being a suite of core subject assessments and across the age range of sort of 5 to 14 years old, it was ideal.
What was it that drew you towards GL assessment and the Progress Test Series in particular?
I mean, the tests themselves present really well, both paper-based and digital content. There's a 90,000 strong standardization sample, for example, that means that the reliability is there. So that's what we wanted, something reliable. But to be honest, one of the biggest things is someone who'd spent many hours sat on the living room floor surrounded by test scripts, marking individual questions at a time, or covering the classroom tables with papers at 6 p.m. and walking around, must have walked miles marking pages at a time.
Oh, fun times.
It was the immediacy of that reporting, the insight it gave us, and to be able to get that often before students had even stood up from their desks to leave the classroom was really beneficial.
When we adopted the progress tests, did colleagues understand what they were using and looking at? I mean, I remember you invested a good amount of time working with us all to get us up to speed with what standardized tests are and how the reports can provide key insights into the students. What do you remember about this process?
Yeah, I remember working with people like you. I had to work pretty hard, Finn, but no. The report content itself was pretty user friendly, so it didn't take much for colleagues to be able to pick out the key threads, whether that was at sort of year group or class or individual student level across English, maths and science. The company was good to work with as well, so I attended some training and then was able to sort of disseminate that to colleagues, also give them access to the wealth of video content, help pages, that sort of thing, so that they didn't have to bother me with any questions. We did put in place Inset, of course, and you might even remember. I'm sure it was really memorable, right?
Oh, unforgettable. I mean, I still think about it most days.
I'm sure you do. And this, it's easy given the provision of the training materials on the website. And then it was just about embedding that language of standardized testing. The challenge wasn't just supporting colleagues in being confident in what the data meant, but also helping them to communicate effectively to parents without them becoming flummoxed or causing undue alarm, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. And what did we learn from those earliest test sittings? What do you know now that you wish you'd known then?
What did we learn? Well, other than ensuring that colleagues don't hand out students' access codes completely indiscriminately, you mean, like our head of English did, having to rush around and collect them back in before any child completed a test on another kid's behalf. It was funny, but it was time consuming. I think in terms of learnings, it became quite clear over time that colleagues across the school were pretty content for me to do a lot of the work in terms of scrutinizing the data, and that focus shifted from the mechanics of sitting tests, completing test sittings, to really empowering other people to take ownership of it all. It wasn't mine. What do I know now that I wish I had done when working in schools rather than with them? I think probably underestimated the complexities of the process of creating those test materials. The high levels of validity and reliability that you get from PT Series don't happen by accident. There's a lot of hard work that goes into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks ever so much, Andy.
And you.
Moving on to our lightbulb moment now. The lightbulb moments allow us to share your stories to understand the power of data. Perhaps you know already how you can get the most from your assessments, or perhaps you'll learn something new and be able to take something away from the stories shared. This month we're hearing from Calum Whitfield, Teacher of Maths and Head of Academic Data at Haileybury College in Hertford. Thanks for sharing your story, Calum.
Hi, so my name is Calum Whitfield and I work at Haileybury College. One of our lightbulb moments came with the GL progress test series, specifically the maths component. So we are people that continually had been struggling and still are struggling to some extent in maths, and progress quite limited in terms of his internal assessments that he's done at our school and maybe his in-class tests as well. However, his GL progress test that he sat quite recently assessed that his progress in maths was much higher than expected. And actually only 2 of the students in the whole year group got that categorization for the GL progress test in maths. So we wondered why there was kind of this mismatch and why we weren't seeing this progress in maths lessons that we were seeing in kind of his GL test. And what we kind of determined was that it was probably to do with the fact that the GL test is untimed, whereas the tests he's sitting in lessons are timed. So maybe he's struggling to complete things in time conditions. We therefore determined that he might be sort of suffering from a slow processing need. And off the back of that, we're going to make some further investigations with learner support. And we're hoping that with the additional support and with hopefully additional time that he's going to get in his maths, he might be able to reproduce what he's done in his GL tests in his maths assessments.
A huge thank you to all who have sent voice notes in so far. It's always so great to listen to them and hear from teachers on the ground and the successes that they are having that help to make their lives and the learning journey of their students just that little bit easier. However, we're also really excited to let you know that we're introducing a new segment to the podcast called Heard It in the Staff Room, where we share your voice notes of the hot topics of conversation that have set tongues wagging in your staff room. We're going to start off light for the end of the school year. And for next month's episode, we want to know what your plans are for the summer holidays. What are you going to do to unwind? Are you going to go somewhere exciting? And what motto will you be taking with you into the next school year? To get involved, all you need to do is send us a WhatsApp voice note with your contribution to 07917 516 515. Thank you so much for joining us for another Assessment Joining the Dots podcast. It was great to hear how schools are beginning to navigate through the changing assessment landscape and taking positive steps to improve the learning experiences for children. If you'd like any more information from us, please head to our training and support site, support.gl-assessment.co.uk or support.gl-education.com, depending on where you are in the world. You can also tweet us using the handle @GL_assessment or @GL_education and email us if you'd like to know more or contribute. We'd love to hear from you. The email address is podcast@gl-assessment.co.uk. Please do follow and rate our podcast, share with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to be notified when new episodes are available. You can also check out the Renaissance Space podcast from our friends at Renaissance. Please do join us next time when we'll be looking back on the successes of the year and joining the dots on teacher wellbeing. Thanks for listening.